Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar with A Small World. Today, we are going to be talking about saving face, building good relationships at work and in life. My name is Maya Hu Chan with Global Leadership Associates. I'm very excited to be spending the next hour with you. And the webinar will be 1 hour. The first part will be the presentation, and it will last about 40 to 45 minutes. And we're gonna save about 15 to 20 minutes at the end for Q&A. And then the webinar is gonna be interactive. So you will have the opportunity to interact with me and with each other. And everybody is muted and without a video. So you can see me, but I cannot see you. If you would like to share something, you're welcome to, and please use the chat box to share your ideas. And I'm going to be asking you some questions throughout the presentation. Love to hear your input. And if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box only. Do not use the chat box for questions, because then later on when we go to the Q&A session, we're only going to be looking at the Q&A box. So if you have any questions, use Q&A only, but when we're interacting, answering any questions, or we're going to have a discussion, please use the chat box. All right, so let's get started. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. Again, my name is Maya Hu Chan, and I am a Master Certified Coach, and I am the president of the company called Global Leadership Associates. And I am an executive coach, leadership development consultant, keynote speaker, and also author. I have been doing this work for almost 25 years or so. And in the past few years, that what I've done is that, in my work, working with leaders, is that I have been able to work with them and hear so much about their issues and their concerns, and also their frustrations. Now, when people often ask me, Maya, why are you writing this book about saving face, how to preserve dignity and build trust? And I think back about all the work in the last 2 decades that I have done with leaders around the world, that I have learned so much about their stories, and not just their challenges and frustrations, but also success stories. And, when I think about all the experience that they've had, they have shared with me, and I have shared with them this one key concept that resonates with leaders at all levels around the world, across cultures, geography, and time zones. And this concept is so essential to their leadership, but it's also counterintuitive sometimes. And it's the concept of face. And so face, what is face, right? Face is a universal concept beyond its origins of Asia. The concept of face permeates all levels of social and business interactions. It speaks to the common human desire to be accepted and respected. So when you hear somebody say it's not about the money, the real issue is often about face. And in the preface of my book, Saving Face, that I said, I talk about building authentic and lasting human relations, maybe the most important calling for leaders in this century. And what do I mean by that? Now, if we think about, look back, we right now are going through the global pandemic. And we are looking at everybody's going through the lockdown. This is in the winter of 2020. We're being in this pandemic, going through this for almost a year. And also in many countries, US included, that we're going through very divisive political climates and also social injustice. So overall, that there is a lot going on in our world. And if you look at the workplace, that we're continuously working with very diverse teams across geography, time zones, genders, culture, and generations. Our workers, our employees our business partners become increasingly diverse. Now, I know that many of you are coming from different countries. And so if you look around of the people you work with, you collaborate with, that how diverse are they, right? And then another very unique characteristics in terms of our workplace is that we are working more and more remotely, not just because of the pandemic, but it has been a trend. Like we're working with virtual teams, we're working with remote teams. We are using technology to communicate, to connect, and to get job done. And then because of that there is definitely lack of face-to-face interactions with the people we work with. And it's much harder to establish close relationship with people. And on top of that, we're using social media and on a daily basis. When it's so easy, when we're using social media to offend or insult somebody without the normal check and balance of having to actually confront them face to face. Therefore, with all this, the situation, the phenomenon we're going through right now, that I see that building authentic and lasting human relations may be the most important calling for leaders in this century. So now let's talk about the concept of face. What is face, right? So I define face as that face represents a person's self-esteem, self-worth, identity, reputation, status, pride, and dignity. That really represent not just how we see ourselves as a human being, as a person, but also how other people see us. So it's inside and out when we think about the concept of face. And face is the new social currency in today's world. So what do I mean by that, right? So when you think about a currency, the more face you have, the easier and faster you can get things done. And when we have this social currency called face, that you can also de-escalate potential conflicts if you have lots of it. So let's just imagine how we build a supply of face with somebody by continuously making deposit, right? And we build trust, we express gratitude and appreciation. We compliment them and we recognize people for their contributions, both in public and in person. Or we empathize. We're putting ourselves in the other person's place, in their shoes, to understand their challenges and their issues. And we give people their voice, equal time and weight. So when we do that, it's like we're continuously making deposit. Some are small deposit, some are big deposit, but we continue to invest in this relationship bank account. When we need to make a withdrawal, we're careful not to make somebody lose face. For example, we provide feedback in a way that saves face and preserves dignity. If we mistakenly cause them to lose face, the relationship can still be saved if there are enough deposit to cover the withdrawal. So I like to think this as overdraft protection when we're continuously making this deposit into the face account. Now, there are three key concepts of face. It's number one is honoring face. Number two is losing face. That's something we wanted to avoid. And number three is saving face. And when you do those three things combined, if you do them well, then you will be able to build solid, lasting, authentic relationship, both at work and in personal life. So let's first take a look at the first concept, honoring face. So what is honoring face? Honoring face are actions taken to show respect, admiration, and preserve dignity for others. Okay, so when we think about honoring face, there are many different ways that we can do it. And it's not a rocket science. It's something that we can do continuously in a daily basis if we're intentional and we're mindful about it. And I love this quote from Maya Angelou. she said that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. And that's what honoring face can do, is to create a lasting impression and then build positive relationship. When you honor someone, you're sending a message to them that I see you, I hear you, you matter. Okay, and so I'd like to ask everybody a quick question. Let's do a poll, and you can type your answer in the chat box. Okay, so based on the research, that what percentage of employees in the US think their opinions matter at work? Okay, and I have A, B, C, D, 4 different answers: 10%, 30%, 50%, or 75%. What do you think is the answer from the US workers, that they think their opinions matter at work, their voice is being heard at work? What percentage? So I'm going to ask Pamela to, since I cannot see the chat box, I'm going to ask her to read the answers. So go ahead and just put down A, B, C, D. Which answer do you think is the right answer?
So we have here 10%, 50%, 30%, 50, 30, 50, 10, 10, 30, A, 30, 30, 10. So most 30s and 10%.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, you're pretty correct in terms of the answer. Now, the research shown, this is from a Gallup survey, that the correct answer is 30%. So, and that's an astonishing number, right? Only 30% of US employees think that their opinion matters at work. And just imagine that if you're going to spend 8-10 hours of your life every day at work, but then your voice is not being heard, it's not being taken seriously, it's not being respected, that what does that do to your productivity and your performance or your motivation, right? So now, as leaders, that we can actually reverse this. So by honoring face, that I'm talking about things that it's really, like I said earlier, it's not rocket science. There are things that we can do on a daily basis, as simple as simply listen to people, okay? And give their voice equal time and weight, regardless of their ranks, their position, and make sure that you treat people with respect and dignity when they're at meeting situation. You give people, and make sure that the quiet members is invited to speak, and you acknowledge their contribution, and you provide positive recognition to people, and you give people credit when credit is due. And you do what you say you were going to do. And this is so simple, right? Keep your words, keep your promise. And that's a sign of respect. And respect hierarchy, respect age, status, opinions. Now, I know that many of you are coming from, around the world in many different countries, that cross-culturally, that different cultural, that we have different ways of treating hierarchy. And then, some countries are more hierarchical oriented, some countries are more equality. And in the status, in terms of age, seniority, it all matters. So make sure that you take into consideration when you interact with people in terms of respecting all of those factors. And in the workplace, assign greater responsibility is a great way of honoring face, okay? And you're telling the other person, I trust you. I know that I believe you will do a great job. So that will boost people's confidence and lift them up. Add visibility, help people become visible, give them opportunities to speak in front of others, and acknowledge their contribution with senior leaders. All of those different ways can add visibility for your employees and team members. And another way is that ask them to teach, coach, or mentor other people. Now, those are just some examples of the ways that you can honor face for others. And so that's the first concept. a face, right? And that's something that you can do on a daily basis if you pay attention. Now, let's look at the second concept. The second concept is losing face, and that's something we wanted to avoid. Now you see here a picture of a glass that's water is spilled out, right? So when I grew up in Taiwan, I have heard this saying that's 2,500 years old, Chinese proverb that my parents and teachers said to me all the time. And the teaching all the kids, it says like this: spilled water is hard to regain. Now imagine that you accidentally knock over a glass of water on the table, okay? And then you get water all over the floor. How hard is it to get the water all back in the glass? Pretty difficult, right? Almost impossible. Now, even if you manage to put some back into the glass, do you still want to drink it? I don't think so, yeah? So now, when you think about the way that we interact with people, that it's like you spilled water is hard to regain. Whatever you say or do, that you can't take it back, okay? And then so when we think about and leaders that in our daily activities or interactions with people, that we have to be mindful about what we say and do, that sometimes we can cause somebody to lose face unintentionally. So what is losing face? Okay, so losing face describe conditions where people ultimately feel devalued, humiliated, or unappreciated. Losing face happens when something or someone provokes shame, fear, vulnerability, and a wide range of negative emotions. And you know, when we do that, it's like a spilled water, you can't take it back. And sometimes it can actually damage the relationship permanently. Now, when people lose face, it provokes all those negative emotions, and those negative feelings can directly impact how well they do their job, how well they perform, how much they speak up at work, or how much they share their ideas at meetings, even how long they stay with the company and how loyal they are with the organization. So, you know, when people may not actually use the word like, oh, I feel like I've lost face at work, but much more likely, they would say something like, my boss doesn't appreciate what I do, or they don't really treat my ideas seriously. I don't feel like I'm being heard. I don't feel I belong. When you hear those expressions, that you look deeper, that what they're saying to you is that I have lost face, I have lost my dignity, and I don't feel I'm being respected. Now, so it's so important for us to be mindful about this kind of situation. Now, very often we don't want it to actually run on an autopilot, you know, on a daily basis. Now, we can cause somebody to lose face unintentionally if we're running on autopilot. For example, giving negative feedback in public. We don't even think about it. We do this in front at a staff meeting, or we challenge or disagree with somebody without thinking, is this the right place or right time, or what could be the impact on the other person. We fail to acknowledge the hierarchy or engaging in microaggression behaviors. For example, very subtle insults, telling insensitive jokes, or ignore somebody's comments at meetings, or when they're speaking, you interrupt them, and much, much more. And we call this microaggression. Okay, and then sometimes that we don't do this intentionally to hurt their feelings or damage their relationship, but sometimes the impact could be quite negative. Let me share a story with you. A client of mine, let's just call her Linda. Okay, Linda works for a software company, and she used this software called Slack to communicate with her team every day. Many of you probably are using it as well for your work. Now, the team members are constantly sharing information. And so Linda pride herself for being highly efficient and very, very open and transparent. So she started using Slack for all forms of communication. She will assign tasks, she will share information, and she also started to give feedback to team members on Slack. What happened was that the feedback tend to be negative and point out that somebody has done something wrong. And over time, that when this person received that feedback, that they felt humiliated and embarrassed, okay? And everybody else are reading the same message. And guess what happened to them is that they're thinking, wow, I feel bad for this person. And I certainly don't want to be in that position myself. So over time, people started to check out, disengage, and they stopped taking risk or asking questions. And she had inadvertently created this fear-based culture that people become disengaged and risk averse. Her team performance has suffered as a result of that. So when she and I started working together, I was her coach, that I started doing 360 interviews with her team members and to identify what are some of the causes of this team low performance and low motivation of her team. And we figured out that was the key sort of root cause of those, the result of the team. So we started to create a behavior plan to help her reverse the situation to fix this problem. And she started to provide critical feedback in private. And then she started rebuilding the trust with her team. And then she would provide positive feedback and in a group setting. And if she's going to provide negative feedback, she doesn't point fingers at a particular person. She would actually address it as an issue that everybody needs to be aware of. So day in, day out, it was hard work. And it took her 6 months to turn the situation around and then to rebuild that trust with her team. But this has transformed the way she leads by being mindful, by being intentional with her actions. She got off the autopilot, right? So now let's, I have another question for you now. Have you ever caused someone to lose face unintentionally? Or perhaps you have witnessed someone losing face in public. Now, I'd like you to share that, please share that in the chat box. Now, what happened? Give us sort of a high-level description about, have you done this unintentionally? Or perhaps you have seen something like this happen and somebody caused somebody to lose face unintentionally. What happened? Okay, and Pamela, if you could read some of the answers from the chat box, that would be very helpful. I'm going to give you a few seconds to share that.
So we have here Fabian saying that his colleague corrected him very rudely during a client presentation he was giving.
Wow. That must make you feel bad and embarrassing in front of a client. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's really something that sometimes we're not even thinking about the potential impact we can have. What else, Pamela?
Alicia witnessed a lady who was hurt left the company by putting herself in sick leave for months on purpose. AC
wow.
thinks many people as well as brands are worried about losing face on social media, the new crisis media. Elena says herself, she was bullied and went into a horrible mediation meeting. Nick says never. Deliberately lowering one's standards to put down another hasn't happened yet.
Yes. Absolutely. And you know, when we put ourselves in the other person's shoes before we say or do something, whether it's on social media or do this on a Slack or email, that sometimes people are less sensitive when we don't see that person face to face. If you actually have to deliver the message in person, that people tend to be much more aware and careful about what they say because that they have the person in front of them. But when we started using social media or technology to communicate, the bullying happen, and sometimes people are not as considerate or sensitive about the impact on the other person. So that's something that we all have to be aware of. And then knowing that the impact is actually sometimes even more harsh than doing this face to face, because then there's no chance for the person to sometimes it can be taken so harsh that, and also is being exposed with other people as well, particularly in a work situation. So now, thank you for sharing those examples. Now, let's talk about the third concept. The third concept is called saving face. Okay, so saving face is the authentic and intentional act of turning around a situation to prevent the loss of respect or dignity for all parties involved for a positive outcome. Okay, so in reality, that we often have to deliver bad news, or we have to point out something was not right and provide negative feedback. And that's inevitable, and that's also a leader's job to do that. So we certainly wanted to make sure that, you know, we're not so careful that we stop providing constructive feedback. But what can we do to deliver the feedback, hold people accountable at the same time that we help the other person preserve dignity, and then build lasting relationship with other person, between you and the other person? It's about saving face. Okay, so let me share a story of saving face. That's one of my favorite stories a client of mine actually has shared with me. So let's just call this person Jeff. Okay, so Jeff was the finance director of a global company. Jeff was facing a big crisis. Under his watch, a frontline employee had stolen over $100,000 in an 8-month period. As finance director, Jeff has designed and deployed the entire cash flow process that allowed this employee to commit the fraud undetected. It was a high-profile case, and it was discussed not only in the security meetings, but also spread quickly throughout the entire company. So when the theft was revealed, and the scope of it ballooned with each day of the investigation, Jeff felt entirely victimized and responsible for the situation. It was an example of losing face. So very soon, the company's COO planned a meeting with Jeff and his team. The stress consumed Jeff. He lost weight. He couldn't sleep for days, and then he developed a bad rash. And he felt like a dead man walking. Well, when the day finally arrived, the team waited nervously in a conference room. And the COO walked in. He just actually flew in from Germany. And then he walked in, and Jeff's dread and anxiety was impossible to ignore. The COO broke the tension with just one sentence. He said, "I don't care about the theft." He continued to say that theft is unavoidable, whether one runs a hot dog stand or a multinational company. The company was insured and would be made whole. And the COO said, "I only want to know that you plan to review the process and fix it. And you seem well on your way from what I can see." Jeff's demeanor immediately brightened. For the rest of the meeting, Jeff and his team focused on problem solving, and he returned to his job with renewed energy. The COO has saved his face. So now, how did the COO do it? Number one, he created psychological safety while holding Jeff accountable. So he didn't let him off the hook, right? He held him accountable, and he made sure that Jeff knows that he is responsible for fixing this problem. But then he also created psychological safety so that he and his team can focus their energy in solving the problem. He was kind and firm at the same time. He chose his words carefully. He showed humility and emotional intelligence when dealing with an emotionally delicate situation. He helped Jeff overcome shame and embarrassment quickly and refocus his energy on solving the problem and moving forward. He sent a clear message to Jeff: I trust you. I have confidence in you to do the right thing. And that is saving face. So now, I'd like you to think about your own experience. Okay, has someone ever helped you save face? Okay, what happened? How did that make you feel? And how did you feel about that person? Okay, and how did that change your relationship with that person when somebody helped you save face? Please type in the answer in the chat box. Give us some examples. I think that this is something that we have all experienced. It could be, in personal life or at work situation, that somebody actually help you save face by turning a potentially embarrassing or humiliating situation into something that's safe, but then you are still able to do your work and perform, but without public humiliation. What happened? Love to hear from you. So Pamela, if you can read some of the answers, that would be great.
So the first answer from Fabian, he says that his colleague helped him save face in front of his boss, and now they are close friends.
Yeah, because you know that this is someone that you can trust, right? And he has your back, or she.
Nick says that it depends on the scenario. Waiting for some more answers. Nick says that some individuals go out of their way to demean others.
Yeah. And when we think about helping others save face, it's really, sometimes that, they may feel at the time, they may feel a little bit helpless and not sure how to defend themselves or turn the situation around. And so it really is helpful for you, if you're a leader or even a colleague, that think about how can you be an ally? Okay, how can you advocate for someone, or how can you help somebody save face so that they have the chance to recover? And it's not about let them get away with what they do, but really it's about help them preserve their dignity so they have the chance to recover and to fix the problem later on. So it's like the situation with Jeff, right? The COO not only accomplish the work of that have Jeff and his team fix the problem, and he saved Jeff's face. So Jeff is able to renew his energy and to continue to gain his credibility and move forward with it. So very likely that you actually save a very valuable employee in your organization. And that is also a sign of respect. Okay, so now, thank you for sharing. Now, so when we think about saving face, and also that has directly linked to respect, and how people feel they're being respected, also directly connected to their job performance. So I want to share this research that was done by McKinsey, that they have researched 800 managers and employees across 17 different industries. What they found was that 47% of those who were treated poorly deliberately decreased their time spent at work. Almost half of them. 38% said they intentionally decreased the quality of their work. 66% admitted that their performance declined. 78% said their commitment to the organization had declined. Those are astonishing numbers. Those are, if you think about the organization, that if you have 78%, almost 80% of people don't feel they have less commitment to the organization, what does that do to their job performance and to their output? Okay, so respect is not just a nice thing to do, but it's also impact your bottom line directly. Okay, so now I'm going to share with you a study that was done by Google, and talk about, back in 2012, that Google did had an initiative, and they called Project Aristotle. And this project was to try to answer a very simple question, is that what makes a team great? Okay, and then so they have studied 180 teams from all over the company around the world. And they had lots of data, and they tested many hypotheses to see what makes a team great. Is it who in the team? That would make the team great, or does it have to do with the people's educational background, their personality type, or their job skills, or perhaps their backgrounds? Which factor really makes a difference? And after testing all those hypotheses, and then they actually found out, the researchers find out that one of the number one factor that makes a team great is called psychological safety. So what does psychological safety mean, right? So now if you look at the definition here by Amy Edmondson, she's the Harvard Business School professor, that she defines psychological safety as it's a shared belief held by members of a team that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. Psychological safety is a sense of confidence that the team will not embarrass, reject, or punish someone for speaking up. Okay, and so psychological safety, according to Google study, that can be demonstrated in two key behaviors. Number one, they call conversational turn-taking. So what that means is that in a team meetings or a team setting, that everyone will have the chance to speak and then to say what they think and how they feel. And at the end of the meeting, that nobody actually feel like they hold back on anything in their mind. And then they feel free to express their opinions. And also everyone has roughly the same amount of time to communicate and to share their idea, to speak. So you don't see one or two people dominate the meeting. So that's the first behavior. It's conversational turn-taking. The second behavior is they all have high social sensitivity. So people in a psychological safe environment, they pay attention to the impact of their words, of their actions, and they look at the reactions that other people have within the team setting. So they're sensitive to some of the physical, verbal, nonverbal cues, and then to make sure that they continue to demonstrate respect with each other while getting the job done and creating this psychological safe environment. So those are the two behaviors that Google has found that to really help building a psychological safe environment. So what happened when people don't feel safe? Okay, when we don't feel safe, we tend to have three different reactions. Okay, so we either we fight back, or we flight, we run away, or the third reaction is actually most common in the workplace. It's called freeze. So when people freeze, it's that they become very quiet, they don't say anything, and they don't contribute, they don't ask questions, they don't share their ideas. And then sometimes they withdraw and check out, and they disengage. So when you have people in your team that demonstrate those behaviors, that you need to ask yourself, what's happening here? that why are people reacting this way? Is it perhaps because they don't feel safe? And it is so important though to think about what is the opposite. You know, when people feel safe, what happens? Well, it's a completely different scenario. When we feel safe, we're more relaxed, we're more energized, and we also feel we're being heard, and we feel we belong and not just fitting in. We feel we're accepted, respected, and valued. And when people feel this way, they show up very differently. They have a very different way of, in terms of their behaviors. They're more free to express their thoughts and feelings, and they're more engaged, and people laugh more, right? They joke around, and they're more relaxed, and they trust each other. They take risks, and they tend to be more creative, and they feel empowered to take actions. And then the last point here is so crucial, is that they focus their energies on collective goals and problem solving, problem prevention, rather than self-protection. It takes a lot of energy for self-protection. If you're free of that, then people tend to focus their energy on doing their best work. Okay, so now, how do leaders create psychological safety? What can we do to help create psychological safety? There are three things I will recommend. Number one is lead by example. Okay, so be the first one to show humility and vulnerability. Okay, as a leader, that you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to be right all the time. Okay, ask questions and show interest in the work and knowledge of others. Ask for feedback and acknowledge criticism when it's appropriate. And if you're wrong, admit you're wrong. Okay, so to create this culture of psychological safety, you have to lead by example. You have to actually demonstrate vulnerability and humility and emotional intelligence. So you need to lead by example. That's number one. Number two is to get everyone involved, okay, and demonstrate inclusive behaviors. Like I talked about earlier, that to make sure that you make sure everybody at the meeting had the opportunity to speak up and being heard, and nobody's being cut off. And you also wanted to invite people to speak if they have been quiet, and ask people not to hold back or edit their thoughts. Give them permission to participate and share their ideas. Ask team members to give their peers a chance to be fully heard. So make sure that the conversation is broader and deeper when everybody's involved and feel safe enough to share their minds. Now, the third point here to create psychological safety is to master the art of honoring and saving face. Okay, so that you continue to lift people up and build their confidence, and listen to them and invite them to participate and value their contributions. And also, when there's a potentially sensitive situation, that you know how to manage it. You get off the autopilot and have your human antenna up. So what I mean by human antenna is that, imagine that we have this antenna on our head, right? In the old days, when we used the old radio, that we have to literally manually raise the antenna. If the antenna was down, what happened? You can't hear anything, right? Or sometimes you hear a lot of static. But if you actually raise the antenna all the way up, all of a sudden that you're receiving the signals from all different directions, lots of signals, so you can hear the music on the radio, or you can hear what people are saying and talking. So become very clear. So when we're interacting with others, we wanted to raise our human antenna to continue to be aware of those interactions and potentially embarrassing or uncomfortable situation. You can still have difficult conversations, but you think before you speak, and then you are kind and firm at the same time, and then you are balancing psychological safety and accountability. So now with that, I'd like to share with you a quick model. It's called AAA model. And that's, I have a couple different models in my book, but this is a one that's very easy to apply. And it's something that I think people can use in all situations. So the AAA model has 3 A's. It's an acronym, obviously. So the first A is aware. Okay. Now, let me back up and then share and let you know what is the AAA model is for. Okay, so today's leaders need to attract, retain, and motivate team members and employees and build strong relationships across distance, time zones, and cultural differences. And leaders must move in many circles. You have to think in many styles, and you have to be intentional with your actions. And you have to create and develop cultural agility. Okay, and then so in order to create that cultural agility, you have to, those are the 3 steps that you can do on a daily basis. Number 1 is aware. So be aware of your own assumptions, your behaviors, and your bias. Now, think about the impact that your words and actions may have on other people, and raise that awareness, and you know your audience. And for example, if you're conducting a meeting with the international team members, not everybody is a native English speakers. You wanted to try to reduce or eliminate some of the acronyms or slangs and idioms. For example, Americans, we often say, oh, you know, use the sports related acronym like, oh, we just hit a home run, or what a catch-22 situation, or that's just a piece of cake. Those expressions may or may not be interpreted or understood in a global audience. So number 1 is be aware of your own actions and your own behaviors and your bias and assumptions. The next step is acquire, right? So acquire is to seek to understand the other person's frame of reference. Put yourself in their shoes, raise your antenna, right? And to acquire information, to seek to understand, to really listen. Now, the third A is adapt. So adapt your behaviors, take the thoughtful action to produce positive outcome for everybody involved, okay? And so those 3 steps is that first you have awareness, and then you acquire from the other person's perspective, and then you bridge the gap and adapt your behaviors. And that's the 3 step I call AAA model, and it can work really, really well. And you know, whether you're working with someone from a different cultural or different generation, or somebody within the same country, even same company, but you may have a different perspective and things, that this AAA model can really serve as a good reminder. So now with that, I'm going to kind of stop and take some questions. So please go to the Q&A box and type your questions. Okay, and we have about 10 minutes to answer your questions, and I'm going to stop sharing and then go to the box. Okay, so I see there's a lot of wonderful comments here, and I'm going to open up the Q&A now. All right, great. So the first question is that what about people who want to hustle you in being a zero-sum negotiator? Right. So, you know, this happens that people sometimes are wanted to win it all, right? Winner takes it all. And then if you have someone like that, one of the important thing is to always think from a win-win perspective and then set the tone, okay? Always remind the other person that we're in this, we would like to do business with you, and we certainly wanted to have the best outcome possible. Now let's think about what can we do so that we can both we can both win. Okay, so then it set the tone and continue to remind the other person that's where you're coming from. Okay, and then if you can also build an allyship, right? Think about who is on your team and what can you do to strengthen that position, and continue to think about long term that this is not a one-time deal as we work together. And hopefully that we will have other opportunities that we can continue to work together in the future. So what can we do then to make this work in the long term that will be able to benefit each other? So look things from a long-term perspective, and also emphasize and set the tone from the very beginning. Great question. Thank you. Now, James says that how can I give feedback to someone who takes everything personally and it's very emotional? Yep, it happens, it definitely happens sometimes that people are not always open to feedback, and particularly if they take things personally. So number one is that don't do this in public, right? Always do this in private. And if you're already doing that, think about that. There's 3 different ways that you can give feedback, 3 different styles. The first style, it's called straight talk. Okay, so straight talk is that we provide feedback. We say what needs to be said to the right person at the right time, at the right place, accurately, respectfully, and clearly. So let me kind of go back and then deconstruct this definition of what straight talk means. So you want to make sure that you say that you give the feedback to the right person. You don't talk around that person. You have a one-on-one situation, you sit them down, and then you said, I'd like to have a discussion with you about this situation. And then you also want to make sure it's the right place. You don't do this in a staff meeting or in the hallway, but ask them if you can have a closed door, behind the door meeting, one-on-one with them. And is this the right time? Are they in the right mood? And are they prepared? Are they calm? So make sure that you check all those boxes. And then you also want to make sure that the message you conveyed is accurate. So you don't want to make a general statement about, oh, you're always late, or I just don't think you're very reliable. When you use those kind of phrases, that you're attacking the other person's character, you put a label on them, and that simply is not fair. So being accurate, meaning that you actually wanted to provide some proof, some data or facts to back it up. And you want to do so clearly. So state your points clearly. And then you also want it to be respectful. Now, respectful meaning that, it's not about treat others as you would like to be treated. Now you see that that's the golden rule, right? Now there is a platinum rule. It says that treat others as they would like to be treated. Okay, so if the other person prefer that you're providing positive feedback first and then negative feedback, and you'll be able to present more facts-based, then go ahead and do it that way. And then if the other person really prefer get right to the point and let's just deal with the facts, then you can be more direct. And you also want to consider the relationship you have with the other person, that you have trust, okay? And do you have any bias against this person? So always be mindful about that. So let me repeat that the straight talk, this is actually in my book, is that straight talk is to say what needs to be said to the right person at the right time, at the right place, respectfully, accurately, and clearly. And then there are 2 other ways that I would not recommend that people very often use to give feedback. The second way is called blunt talk. So blunt talk is that you basically dump everything on the other person. You're not considerate. Is this the right person, right time, right place? And you also don't think about if this is respectful, accurate, or clear, right? And you're frustrated, you're fed up, you just want to dump it on the other person, get it off your chest. And we call that blunt talk. What happens is that when you do that kind of blunt talk, very often the other person feels being attacked, and then they become defensive, and they either fight or flight or freeze. So that's not effective. Okay? And then the third way is called safe talk. So what safe talk means is that, you know, you're so careful, you dance around the issue that you don't actually address what's really happening. And so the person walk away not understanding what you're trying to tell them. Maybe they just didn't get the message. So safe talk is equally ineffective. Okay, so when we think about those three different styles, that straight talk really is something that I would suggest you do. And to continue to remind ourselves that to follow those principles. And, you know, I know somebody is very sensitive and that they may, you know, if they're emotional, but you really do need to help them focus on the issue at hand. And you know, and if you follow straight talk, and I think it tend to work much, much better. Good luck. Let me look at the next question here. Fabian says, a colleague embarrassed me in front of my boss. I confronted him about it, but he doesn't understand. What can I do so it doesn't happen again? Okay, so this is something that, that's too bad that you already provide that feedback and talk to that person. Now, I would ask that person to put himself in your position and then to think about how he would feel if you have done the same thing to him. Okay, and hopefully that over time, you know, after that conversation, they would think twice before they embarrass you in front of your boss. Okay, and you know, and you know, sometimes that you may also want to consider asking him that if he has any complaint or criticism, that talk to you first before bring it up to their boss. And that way that you would appreciate that heads up and you'll have the opportunity to fix the problem. And so, you know, if you can come to some kind of agreement and ask the other person to cooperate with you, then hopefully that you can avoid this from happening again. Okay, thank you, great question. The next one is that how to win jealous colleagues at work, especially those backstabbing. Yeah, well, this is happening, you know, in a workplace very often that, you know, there's jealousy involved. And, you know, and I would say when you are working in a situation like this, that when you have people who are very jealous of you, and one thing that you may want to do is to think about, put yourself again in their position, and put yourself in their position and say, why are they doing this? Okay, you know, back to the AAA model, right? And think about, this is my experience, this is my bias, and perhaps, or are they really jealous of me? Or is there something else that I have done to create some of the harsh feelings? And so first, have some reflection about your own situation, and then think about where are they coming from. Perhaps they don't feel being recognized. Perhaps they feel insecure about their position. Maybe they feel like they deserve some credit for the work they have done. Perhaps they feel like you're getting a lot of recognition, but they're being ignored. Whatever reason that might be, that think from their perspective. It doesn't make them right, but at least you can understand where they're coming from. And then when this happened again, and then think about what can you do to start building that bridge, right? And whether it's to think of ways to give them some visibility or work with them, collaborate with them, and so they will get some recognition. So whatever it is, it really is something that you wanted to put yourself in their position to understand where they're coming from. And then again, there are things that you can do to change, but there are things, it's beyond your control. But if you can see that, do your part, right? And then there's no regret. All right, thank you for that question. And the next one, how can you save face after making a mistake? Okay, now, so, you know, we all make mistakes. Everybody, we all do. Nobody's perfect. So one thing that I have seen leaders are doing, they're doing such a good job that if they make a mistake and then the best thing is to actually admit that this is what you've done. And then you actually earn more respect from other people than trying to cover it up. So when we think about saving face, it's really about saving face for other people. It's not so much about saving face for yourself. If you save face for yourself and then you're trying to cover up, everybody can see it. You actually lose more credibility that way. So being a courageous leader is about saving dignity for others, and then also admit that you've done something wrong, and people actually will have more respect for you.